Of course it serves a role. It's evolutionarily healthy. And we can talk about the differences between healthy stress and unhealthy stress. But when it starts becoming chronic, that is when burnout sets in. Your brain doesn't get time to rest or recharge. It's not like a tiger in the forest where you fight, flee, and then there's like a respite time. So it's just ongoing in the background at a low hum at all times.
What are the symptoms of burnout then? How do I know if I'm burnt out?
The interesting thing about burnout is that the definition is changing. So earlier, when you think about burnout, you know what someone with burnout has, or you might yourself might think like, oh, I know what burnout is. I don't have it. That's a lot of people feel this way. Classic, typical symptoms of burnout: apathy, lethargy, feeling unproductive, not very motivated. And the WHO in 2019 designated burnout as an occupational phenomenon and a clinical syndrome, which was really validating for many people who are feeling that way. This is 2019, way before the pandemic. In 2020, 2021, and 2022, what burnout is looking like has changed. So it is no longer these classic, typical symptoms. Now we are seeing increasingly atypical features of burnout. In one study, 60% of people with burnout had an inability to disconnect from work as their main feature of burnout. So it's not what you think when you're thinking about the face of burnout of someone who's really not interested in work. You could be that person who is engaged in work and can't shut off, and you're thinking to yourself, this can't be burnout. I'm totally, engaged in work. In fact, I can't shut off my brain. You might be experiencing atypical burnout.
Atypical burnout. Because when I think of burnout, I think of like not getting out of bed and losing motivation. But you're telling me that my addiction to work might be a symptom and a sign of being burnt out.
That's right.
So how do I know? Because I'm addicted to my work. I love my work.
You know when it is different from your baseline. Being addicted to work, you love your work, yes, but you also make time for sleep, relationships and connections with loved ones.
Yeah.
You feel a sense of engagement in the world. It is not interfering with your day-to-day life, so to speak.
Okay.
So when you are feeling that sense of inability to unplug, that means you're checking your phone multiple times per night because you feel like you have to keep up. You are trying to keep up in the hamster wheel situation where you just can't. And so there are many manifestations of this atypical burnout, but that is one. And so often what's happening now is that people are feeling burnt out. Again, unprecedented rise, right? In stress, chronic stress, and burnout. And often people don't recognize that it's happening to them simply because the face and definition of burnout is changing.
How many people are burnt out? Do they know? Have they done any studies on that to figure out what that number is?
We don't know. I mean, it depends on the sector. So there are lots of studies on burnout. And so one big study, it was done on parental burnout and found that 2/3 of parents have burnout.
2/3? Jesus, 66%.
Yeah. And that is probably underestimated and certainly underreported. So typically we're seeing anywhere rates from 60 to 70% of people note burnout. But again, think about, if based on what we've talked about, if you are feeling like I'm not burnt out. So if you're self-reporting burnout and you're saying, I don't really feel burnt out. I'm very engaged in my work. In fact, I check my email 10 times a night. You could actually be having burnout. There's also a lot of stigma and shame around burnout. So people don't want to come forward and say, hey, I might be stressed or I might have burnout.
If I have that atypical burnout, why does it matter?
It matters because your brain and your body deserve a rest. And to function optimally, you need to have spaciousness. You need, to function optimally, you need to have rest. And when you feel that sense of burnout, you are not thriving.
What if I don't feel it? What if I'm one of those people that you just said that's, checking my emails 15 times a night? I seem to be successful in my work. I'm kind of out of balance in my life. I don't really have anything else going on in my life. I'm just work. But I don't necessarily feel like there's anything wrong. So if I don't feel like there's anything wrong, if I'm successful in my work, then what is the case for making a change?
So I've had lots of patients. I had a clinical practice in Boston. Yeah. And what you're describing is the, young entrepreneur. So many patients who are young entrepreneurs. And the question I would always ask them is, what's your end game? So is it a sprint or a marathon? Are you looking to do this for 2 years and you love it and then that's it? You're going to cash out? Or do you want to think about what your life is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now? And so they would think about it, ponder, and then say, yeah, I want to spend time. My end game is that I want to lead a great life and I want to live until I'm 75 or until I'm 100. And so if you are on this fast track that you're describing, burnout is not conducive with this idea of longevity and having that long life.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking of case studies that I know of people that I think probably check their email 15 times a night and are like that. And those that are out of balance, I think, as you say, you can do that intensity, but you can't do it consistently. Like, it's possible to be that intense, but it's not sustainable. And it doesn't allow you to achieve the other things that life can offer you that will make you happy. There's no way of being like that and having like a healthy relationship with your family, building a family, staying in shape, and all those other things. And that, for me, is the really clear cost to that is you just play it out, zoom out on your life. In 10 years' time, something's going to be broken.
Something's got to give. We don't have, I think that's a good segue into this idea of toxic resilience. It's like we don't all have, human beings, we don't have an unlimited amount of bandwidth. There is a discrete amount of bandwidth that we all have, mental and physical. And so if you are not getting the proper rest that you need and you're not sleeping as much as your body and brain need, and it's not about you as in personal, I don't need sleep, I only need 4 hours. I've also had many patients who've said that to me. But your brain and your body do physiologically and biologically need a certain amount of rest simply for the cellular function to continue.